Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio at 11 p.m., nourishing our souls with the spirit of truth, a book psychographed by two mediums and several spirit authors, including Cairbar Schutel. He was a pioneer of Spiritism in Brazil, and he had so many roles in the dissemination. Besides being a wonderful charitable heart, he was also responsible for a periodical that exists to date and also um, the newspaper, the Spiritist newspaper that exists to date. Cairbar Schutel has a lot to share with us. Let us not forget that these spirits are ahead of us. So they come out of compassion, and this is the message today. It's about compassion. Cairbar Schutel inspired himself in a message in item 17 of chapter 13 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, where it talks about compassion. The Spirit Michel in France 1862 comes to say, compassion is the virtue that brings you closer to the angels. It is the sister of charity which leads you to God. Allow your heart to be moved with compassion before the miseries and sufferings of your fellow beings. Your tears are a balm which you pour out on their wounds. And when out of kind sympathy, you manage to restore their hope and resignation, what delight you will feel. Compassion is the sister of charity whose benefit she prepares and ennobles. This is particular item in chapter 13. Do not let your hand know what your right hand is doing. And we ask, where are we in terms of compassion? The world nowadays is more compassionate than 2000 years ago. Yes, now we have hospitals. Now we have this collaboration amongst nations, but we still need more. If compassion brings us closer to the angels, leads us to God through charity, we need to focus on this. It's a virtue that is fundamental. What is compassion? It's important to ask before we read why Cairbar Schutel is recommending be compassionate to us. He asks us to be compassionate. Compassion, and I'm reading here to you, is sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. So, in a daily basis, how often do you think of the sufferings of others? Once a day? Twice a day? How often do we look at somebody whom we're talking to and feel compassion? How often? Never. Do you need to see somebody really suffering to be compassionate? Or can you feel compassion even though the person is apparently not in need of help, but deep inside you recognize that the person needs it? How often are we compassionate? Well, Cairbar Schutel has a lot more to extend in regards to the truth. To evolve, to be good spirits, we need to develop compassion. And he comes. Without compassion, there is no charity. Tears shed in the vivid heat of piety corrode the dense chains of trials. Expel from us the raw insensitivity towards the screens of anguish that unfolds on our path. Piety is the spontaneous and disinterested sympathy that precedes moral and material, gratuitous antipathy towards those who awaken in us that otherwise becomes fruitless. When the suffering of others does not touch the core of our hearts, the divine guidance establishes that we will equally experience it to evaluate the pains of others, so we are predisposed to support them. Only consoling piety brings joy to the spirit, creating elevation and value. Let us escape from the apparent compassion that manifests itself in crocodile tears, pompous gestures, exclamations, in the artificial scenarios of pretense. Commiseration is measured by the fraternal devotion and the solicitude that it promotes. It is responsible for the gradual depopulation of the zones of moral purge in spirituality. Let yourself be touched by the moving panels of the weeping crisis, time and again tempered in sweat and blood. However, do not stop there. Try to extinguish them. Perlustrate the impervious alleys of necessity and benefit the souls who are agitated in despair inside the cage of its own body. Have piety, compassion, not only of the blatant pictures of intimate inner bankruptcy, but also the sufferings masked by silence and pride, ingenuity and inexperience. Flawed with love, the hearts kept under the vacuum of boredom. Protect childhood since the little travelers of the flesh lack guidance. Favor with the coin and bless with the word the beggars that are only caressed by the dogs that roam the streets. And in the certainty that sincere compassion never expresses cowardice to demolish the good, nor ridicule to excite the laughter of others, accept the force of renewing of souls and inner light of the true life eternalized by God. Be compassionate. I know his writing is elaborated, right? We need to study together. That's why we're here. So he begins paraphrasing: without charity, there is no salvation. But without compassion, there is no charity. So we need compassion to do charity. So we need to revisit where we are in terms of compassion. Are we easy to perceive the sufferings of people? He says here that when we are not attentive to the sufferings of others, we go through experiences that will be alike, so we can better understand the pains of others. Sometimes we suffer because we need to know what others are going through, because we're not there yet. What did you mean, Vanessa? Well, it's a learning experience. In the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, we come to know that we incarnate, we need to be in the flesh, incarnate for three reasons. One, because we need to evolve. So we need experiences to evolve. Two, because we need to redress mistakes of the past. And three, to fulfill our role in God's creation. So God, who created us, has an educational curriculum, and he knows precisely where we are in our spiritual evolution, and what we need to undergo to really progress. So, not everything is karma, not everything is expiation, not everything is just a test. Sometimes it's just a learning experience. We need to learn. And if we are hard to feel the pains of others, we have to undergo it, undergo the same pain, as he's saying, to be more sympathetic to the pains of others. That's why he says, let yourself be touched by the moving panels of the weeping crisis. Right now, our planet is suffering. Brazil, India, everywhere. It's dramatic, my friends. Even in the US, if the numbers of the pandemic are going down in the US, we still have people who need help, families who were totally shook up by this virus, by the crisis. We need to touch our hearts and allow ourselves to help them out. We don't have time to blame. You're not doing it, you're faking it, we need to focus on those who are suffering. So here we have another concept that he brings, that it's not enough to observe and feel the pains of those who evidently are suffering, but there are people who are suffering, but they are masked by silence, they don't tell, or pride, or because they really don't want people to find out, or because of their inexperience. What does that mean? We need to be very attentive to the needs of others. It's altruism. In science, we learn that in our temporal lobes of the cortical areas of the brain, we have a major activation when we're feeling altruistic. It's as if we have antenna to see the pains of others. It's something we can learn. So Cairbar Schutel comes today to say from beginning to end, be compassionate, because if we're not compassionate, we're not going places. And to be compassionate is also perceiving the pains that people feel and they don't say it. We're not going to disclose to them because they don't want us to know, but we're going to give them a hand. We're going to give them support. And this is going to lead us to charity. As the Spirit Michel said, and it's registered in item 17 of chapter 13 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, compassion brings us closer to the angels. And it's a sister of charity. Without compassion, there is no charity. And without charity, there is no salvation. So you and I are being asked to practice compassion in the next 24 hours. And the exercise is so simple. We're going to ask ourselves once in 24 hours. Once we're going to ask ourselves if we're perceiving the sufferings of others and reach out. Because once we really feel it, we can't stop. We have to reach out. That's the exercise. And thus we'll be closer to the angels. It's in the Gospel according to Spiritism. Let us be grateful to Cairbar Schutel, who is inviting us to think of the pains of others and reach out. Thus, we'll be much happier because we'll be in the company of the angels. Dear friends, if you have any question about the message or any suggestion, let us know. We have an email, kardecradio@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to hear from you. For now, We wish you lots of blessings, and we want to see you tomorrow once again in the 11 p.m. program here at Cardiac Radio.